I said on Friday night, Buddy Franklin's 2 goals, they were right in front of us, under our nose. You won't see better. You won't see better. And you remember things. You'll remember, like I remember Gabbo in the grand final, Collingwood-Melbourne, running and bouncing. The ball got away, he kicked the goal. There's some sights you'll never forget. I can remember Royce Hart's marks in grand final, Jez's big mark in the 70 grand final. I'll never forget what Buddy Franklin did on Friday night. It was unbelievably good and just a real thrill.
I tell you what, Dave, what absolutely amazed me last night. Like, Franklin got the ball on the wing, and there was no one between him and the goal. Now, modern footy these days, defences normally hold their structure. If your opponent goes upfield, a couple of defenders stay back. Last night, for some reason, both sides, their defenders stayed with the opposition forwards, which meant that quite often there was no one in the forward 50 at all when the ball started to come forward. And that set up the opportunity for Franklin. But when you think of it, Richo, I can't remember seeing in footy almost ever that there's no one between a player and the goals who's probably 80, 90 minutes from goal. It was just an amazing setup. Just before you get into that one, but still, it was just amazing to see him carry the footy. They couldn't catch him, run to the boundary line and slot it. That's his favourite spot, though, on the boundary line. Yeah. Left foot to the boundary line, 40 metres out.
Now, Richard, I hope you're watching that because Lee had a chance to sort of condense that a little bit, but he went with a long version.
Yes, I did notice that.
We want a lot of wordage this morning. We've got 5 hours, okay? 5 hours to go. Do you know what 5 hours is? That's like waterboarding.
It's a long time,
that's like waterboarding in radio.
There's plenty of issues to be covered here today, Dan.
That's good.
But on Buddy, it was unbelievable. I was sitting right on the boundary, not far away from the 50-metre line, and those 2 goals, the crowd noise when he kicked those 2 goals was 55,000 there. I don't know what it's like grand final day, Lee, but the deafening noise, I couldn't hear through my earpiece the commentary upstairs. It was unbelievable. They really got into it, and Buddy was on fire. Early in the game, he started on the wing, and he was moving around early, and you just got the feeling that he had that confidence against Essendon. He knew that he had a good record, and often players are conscious of that going into games. And he was up and about early and moving around. And, 2 of the best goals I've seen live, BT. They were absolutely unbelievable. The athleticism, 6'6", to be able to bounce the ball running at full pace, I don't think anyone has ever been able to do that. He's the best athlete ever to play the game.
Well, you're the closest, Richard.
Richard, I reckon, I don't know about the bouncing part, Richard, but you could actually run 50 metres and they wouldn't catch you.
I couldn't bounce the ball, though, Lethal. That's the bit about him that I find amazing.
The thing we were lucky with last night is all of the media sat on the northern side where this happened, on the northern flank to the punt road end, and so we had the perfect view. I don't think the people on the other side of the ground quite understood, but I've never seen 2 supporter groups stand and applaud at the kicking of both of those goals. It was amazing. Everyone was electrified and completely out of their seats. I've never seen a stadium stand as one to acknowledge the feat that Franklin did last night.
And Caroline, we've seen marvellous goals kicked by many players at the MCG, but we haven't seen players come back with an encore and kick the same goal again.
No, and I gather that from the commentary, Dennis, there was an encore again where they played the replay of the second goal, and a couple of the Hawthorn players said they heard the crowd absolutely erupt, and they wondered whether there was a blue that they'd missed, and it was the crowd erupting again at the replay on the scoreboard. And could he have is it possible that he overshadowed Cyril Rioli? Because he took a couple of marks last night. In fact, you just have to go to that game, Lee, and that's your highlights reel for 2010. There was about 8 of them.
Fantastic game from a highlights point of view. There was more spectacular things going on in that game than most we've seen for almost the season to point. It's just
so if they continue to improve, Hawthorn, at the rate they've been improving week by week, are they good enough to be top 4 and challenge for the grand final?
Well, we said the thing that, I know Buddy did what he did last night exceptionally well. And he got upfield and he ran through and kicked the goals. But I find that Roughhead and Franklin are nowhere near the forward 50 target options as they were, say, in their premiership year. They're still a mile off that. I thought Hooker, when he was with Franklin in the marking contest, spoiled him quite well. So, Buddy, what he did last night was ground level stuff that was fantastic. But Roughhead is sort of pretty much not doing it at all. And
he looked like an unhappy man last night. Roughhead, frustrated and called for the ball several times, and they weren't kicking to it. Missed a couple early that he probably should have.
Yeah. You'd be really annoyed if you're Roughhead playing in that forward line because he is very magnetic, Lance Franklin. He drew the ball far too often last night for my liking for them to be successful. I know your thoughts on that, Lee. You want the more even spread.
Well, actually, the tactical battle last night was more observable than most of games I've seen. Like one of the tactical battles is that Essendon like Dustin Fletcher to play back 50. Hawthorn decided they wanted to stop Fletcher floating, so they assigned Muston to Fletcher. That meant that Roughhead had to get out of the forward 50 area
He was
and
the
get
teaser
right up.
stallion.
He was the first of the teaser pony up on the
right.
wing. So no wonder Roughhead was out of the contest.
And no wonder he was a bit upset.
And so was Franklin mostly. But Franklin was able to run back with the footy, and Roughhead's probably not able to do that.
Do you nearly concede, Richo, to Lance Franklin on the lead and just do not, under any circumstances, let him get goal side of you?
Oh, no doubt, especially the way modern football's played now, where all the numbers push up the ground. You cannot let him get goal side because there's so much space behind forwards now, and it's a fast break game, almost like basketball. You have to almost play 10 metres goal side of him, concede him on the lead, but if he gets goal side of you and he's got that 50 metres space behind him, you're in a lot of trouble. And just on Jared Roughhead, I know he was frustrated last night. The tactics of the whole game with Muston sort of tagging Fletcher took him out of the play a little bit, but he didn't work hard enough. I was watching him. He was leading at half pace a lot of the time. And look, the thing about Franklin's game was his work rate. He was running from one side of the ground to the other. He was sprinting. Ruffy wasn't doing that. And I think you can sort of make excuses that he wasn't a target. But if you run hard enough and get free of your man, you will become a target. And I just think Ruffy's probably not working quite as hard as he could at the moment.
Hey, Caro, just before you get too excited about the Hawthorn run, and it has been good, 6 wins in a row is fantastic. I don't think there have been too many runs this year that have netted 6 wins in a row. But over the next month, they play the Western Bulldogs, Geelong, St Kilda and Brisbane, 3 of the top 4 sides. We're going to know a lot more, aren't we?
We are, but conversely, you look at Essendon. I think Essendon have played top 8 teams 10 times.
They've got a good run coming up. They play Adelaide, Melbourne, West Coast and North.
They deserve it. They have had a shocking run, and they weren't bad last night. They started badly. They can't have starts like that and expect to come back, but they made an absolute contest of it. Great rivals, these two
they
teams.
Were excellent. Yep.
They always lift against Hawthorn. They'd be very upset today. I was disappointed that more Essendon players didn't show more leadership when I think it was Stanton was absolutely targeted by Chance Bateman all night. Did a fantastic job, and in the rooms after the game they were saying the Hawthorn players were applauding him. I think he got a knock in the head, doesn't remember much of the game, but why didn't they protect him more?
Yeah, Richo, why don't they run off screens and sort of block
something
for someone
Richmond
that's been
players
tagged?
used to be criticised for as well?
Yeah, it is. It's a problem. And most teams, before the game, when you know that a player's going to be tagged, it is a real talking point in the rooms. You know, we're going to make sure we put blocks on. But you get out there a lot of the time and guys get consumed in what they're doing, and it sort of goes out the window a little bit last night. And there's no doubt Stanton wasn't helped by his teammates. And I guess that's what makes the good teams. You know, they continue to do that. And the teams that aren't quite there, they get out there and they lose concentration and they forget about doing that sort of stuff. And that's probably why Essendon can't quite at that next level. If that was a Geelong with an Ablett, you know, you'd find Cameron Ling and players like that looking to block for him. So I think that's just the evolution of being a better team. You do all those things correctly.